Welcome back
Thanks for having me back.
to Legends in My Own Mind. I'm sitting here with the queen of Central Illinois, Stephanie King.
We've been running with the lions, lions. We've been running with the lions, lions. They can't run, they can't hide. We won't stop until they're down. We've been running with the lions, lions.
Stephanie, thanks for joining us so much. You're the first woman I've interviewed. You're the first manager I've interviewed. Both reasons I've wanted to interview you. Last week we went over your whole career, all the big beats, all the big hits and misses, and we talked about your whole career. But this week I want to talk about how you developed over that career. Your legendary career. Central Illinois, legendary. I just think should that be a little more regional? It should be myth. Maybe it should be like myths. The woman, the myth, the legend. I don't know. So we talked about. So last week you told us you started off in a backyard fed, just working with some of your friends. Did you learn anything there?
Not really.
No.
I mean, I learned that I liked it.
Yeah.
So, and then that kind of drove me to find something more.
Yeah.
So I guess I could say I learned.
Yeah.
It was the start of the learning.
That makes sense. And I think, obviously that initial spark, that initial interest, I mean, that's part of the development,
Yeah.
I'm curious, do you feel like you got it natural, or was it like a lot of work for you to get into it, I guess?
I don't think I'm a natural. I think I had to work really hard. I have, I hate public speaking. Yeah. Absolutely hate using a microphone. So that's like been my biggest thing that I have been trying to work on and being forced to work on by you.
So, absolutely. I never let you stop. So how do you? So you don't like public speaking. How do you even?
Yeah, and everyone's
Like,
like,
how do
but
you
you
even
are
make that
public
step?
speaking. You're standing. I'm like, no, I'm having a one-on-one conversation with a child that is screaming at me. I am not talking to everybody. The only people that are listening are the people right there.
Yeah.
So I can. It's not everyone paying attention to me. I like being the secondary character. I'm the co-star. I don't want to be the star. I like being the co-star.
Right.
Which is why I think managing suits me better than being a wrestler.
Okay. So you do enjoy some performance aspect.
Yes.
Okay. Did you do any other performing? Were you a theater kid? Were you
I was
jazz
not.
choir? Anything like that?
I was in marching band.
Marching band. That's.
It's not really theater.
Well, I'm trying to think. I don't know. I was never in a band. Is that like how much of a performance rush did you get from that?
It was actually because, you had to remember your steps, you had to remember your formations, your music, like everything is memorized and you have to do it and it's drilled and it's drilled and it's drilled. So it's a lot of work. And so you get out there and you do the show, and when you pull something off fantastic, you come back and you're just like, yeah. And then you get you go to and you get all the superior awards and you're just like, I nailed it. Yeah.
So you do get that performance rush.
Yeah.
And that was probably a good place for you because you weren't, you were just in a group.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So when you come into the backyard, and so you've done that. So you obviously had some like for performance. When you come into that, you do the backyard thing. You start to see that that could be kind of a outlet for that performance. I wonder how. So I'm just trying to reconcile in my mind, I guess, having that performance aspect versus still not, having that dislike of public speaking, and how like how those like they seem pretty mutually exclusive. Exclusive.
Yeah.
Mutually exclusive. Even if you're, even if you're like, well, I like being the side character, not the star. You know what I mean?
I know, it boggles everyone's minds because they're like, but you're a manager. You're like out there, and I'm like, I'm on the ground. I'm not elevated like the wrestlers are, and the focus is usually on the wrestlers unless I need to do something or unless I insert myself in some way into the match.
Okay, that makes. I mean, like it makes sense. It just it's hard to.
Like I like
wrap your head
performing
around.
and being part of a group more than being alone.
Right.
And the focus being on me.
Yeah.
So, you don't necessarily need to speak to get your point across.
For sure. And you don't necessarily need to speak to perform, there's all kinds of, bands and backup dancers, and, there's the difference between, being a drummer and a lead vocalist and I mean? Like, so it makes sense. It's just, I think the other thing too that makes it difficult is, and we can talk about we'll probably talk about this a little more next week, but there's different levels of there's managers that are kind of like seconds, and there's managers like, a lot of people think manager, they think like Bobby Heenan. Bobby Heenan was the star of the show no matter who he was out there with.
Absolutely.
So like thinking about that, then there was also, Jimmy Hart, who was always more of like a second, so I don't know, just tough to think about. So, okay, so moving from, you move into the backyard, you think like, oh, I like this, fun, I'm kind of interested in this thing. You start going to the actual Indie Fed in Peoria. What do you learn there? What do you learn when you're there?
I learn about bumping. I learn about, the different the different actual moves. And I'd sit and I listen to them talk, and, the psychology of everything that is going into the match. And I'm just trying to learn how I need to think about things.
Right.
And, and learning how to do the bumps and the moves. And
so what did you learn about how you need to think about things?
Mostly it came from actually really hanging out with everybody and then living with two wrestlers. We watched a lot of tape. We talked a lot about, how a match should be done, and, their preferences or what they felt, and then hanging out with some other wrestlers at the back, trying to just discuss, well, this is the point we're trying to get to, so maybe if we start with this and we can get to, getting from point A, B, C, all the way through.
Right. So how did you, what was it like, how did you, or maybe you didn't, did you differentiate at all, because I know what you're talking about, because I talk about that all the time. I say, I've trained with, guys, I can't remember. I've done so many clinics, and, I spent 6 months training with Harley Race, and I've been to OVW and whatever else. And I still feel like I learned more from Tom Marson, just from the time we lived together and sort of bouncing ideas off of each other, and, the way he might say something that make something click in my head, or the way he might say something I disagreed with that made it easy for me to, arguing the point solidified how I felt about that thing in my head, right? Yeah. How does that differentiate for you? Because you're a manager. You're not a wrestler.
But I still need to think about the wrestling, the psychology of the match.
Okay.
And, in case there's a place where I feel like I need to insert myself in a particular, to try and help get a point across, or try and, help somebody get over as a good guy, because I'm almost always the bad guy, because that's what I like.
Okay.
So I feel like I needed to learn, not just learn manager things.
Right.
I need to learn wrestling things.
Right.
So that way I can understand how I fit into, like, I'm a little piece of the jigsaw puzzle. I'm there to complete the picture, but I need to know where to go.
Yeah. So that's my philosophy for training managers is, I almost feel like they need to come to training and watch and listen. And I don't need them to get in the ring. Like, I usually don't put them in the ring to like bump and stuff, but I think they need to come and hear everything that I say and learn the way the guy, start to learn the way the guys move. So when they're out there, they can anticipate, and they can see things from an outside. So, I know it seems like I feel like there needs to be that awareness through managers of what they're looking at, more so even than maybe how to do it. How to do it physically. You know what I mean? Like I don't need the manager to get in and teach him how to do the holds or take the moves, but he needs to know how to see them. He needs to know how the guys are going to move when they're in there. He needs to know how to see that everything. He, she, whoever,
Yeah.
That's how I kind of think of it. Is that how you thought of it?
Well, and at first when I started, I was like, I like being a manager. I don't know if I really want to be a wrestler, but,
right.
And Justin felt that I needed to be trained with the boys and go through the exact same training as the wrestlers, whether I was going to be one or not, because it would help me understand the moves and what was going on in the ring. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah.
I did train for a long time.
Yeah. How long did you train?
Well, we were still at the USA Sports Center, but it was right before we left. Okay. So I was doing it for a couple of months.
Yeah.
And then had an injury, and I decided it was a bad idea to continue doing that, which I kind of regret.
Yeah.
I wish I'd stuck with it more.
Yeah. How come?
I feel like I would have benefited more as a manager just knowing how to do the moves and knowing how they're going to be. I learn better by doing.
Yeah.
I can't just sit and watch and absorb. Like, I have to be in the ring doing it so I understand what's going on.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So you're working with Elmer. You're Charlotte, the hillbilly girl. Did you feel like, how do I say this? Do you feel like you were doing it then, or was it like, were you, okay. New Midwest, we did a lot of practice shows for the year, and they were just kind of little shows, and at the time they were like still a big deal to us, like looking back, I call them practice shows. I don't necessarily know that we called them practice shows or considered them practice shows then, but like we didn't have chairs. Friends and family might show up and watch, they happened every week, and we were just, we'd have entrances and everything, but it was basically just like a upgraded backyard fed, And I did a lot of those before I felt like I was a wrestler. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Yeah. And it was probably, honestly, it probably wasn't until our first show that we charged admission for that I really went out there. And that was the first show I had like real boots for and real tights for, and like that was the first show where I went out there and I really was like, okay, this is the real deal, like I remember kind of clearly making that discernment in my head, like, oh, this is, now I'm really doing this thing, now I have to deliver. Not that I wasn't delivering before.
Yeah, but it was more real, more solid.
Right. So when did you have that feeling? Were you just like, or was it, do you remember when you felt like, okay, this is the real thing?
It was probably when I started with New Midwest, because it was a larger audience at the time.
Yeah.
And I felt like I had more training because it was more organized,
mm-hmm.
and training wasn't really organized in Peoria.
Yeah.
And it was whoever showed up, and that's what they did.
And we played around in the ring for a couple hours.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah. While the green people are learning to bump on the crash pad and
right.
trying not to kill themselves.
Yeah. Practicing the match we want to have, practicing this move.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so when we came down with your training, it was a lot more, we're going to start with this warm up, we're going to do these drills, and then we're going to move into this.
Yeah.
And you did, and there were practice matches. You would pair people up, and I'd done a couple of practice matches, mm-hmm. and there was also practicing promos, mm-hmm. which is another very important thing.
Yeah. So you had been doing it for several months before you came to New Midwest.
Yeah.
Did that feel like just playing around? Did that feel that different from the backyard, or was it just like? When you came to New Midwest, that's when you felt like, okay, this is a real thing. When did you feel like did you know? Was there a moment where you're like, oh, I can do this? Was that before or after you came to New Midwest, or was it just kind of a progression?
It was just kind of a progression because I was just starting to kind of dabble in it in Peoria, and I was like, okay, there's paying people, and and I put forth the effort into it because I don't half-ass things.
Yeah, yep. That makes sense. So you brought up promos.
Yeah.
Promos are important.
They are.
Again,
it's public speaking, and I struggle so bad.
So how did you? How did you feel in promo training? Did promo training help you when you were out there? Like, where were you at with that?
It gave me a lot of anxiety just doing promo training. I'm good behind the camera, not in front of it.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, did you learn anything? What was the biggest thing you picked up from Peoria?
I mean, it was just trying to learn the basics and being able to go out in front of people and be somebody I'm not.
Yeah.
Because I am obviously not a hillbilly.
I
come from Florida, but Florida man's a lot different than your average hillbilly.
swamp people, much different from your North Carolinian hillbilly.
Exactly.
For sure. Okay, so then when you get to New Midwest, what you learn there?
That was when the training, I'd actually started bumping in a ring and following the drills and doing the conditioning, and I learned early on it's best to be first in line for the drills than at the end.
Yep.
So I was always trying to get to the front of the line. It
Right.
didn't take me long to figure that one out.
Yeah.
I don't like being at the end of the line.
Okay. So how was it? So playing a different character, not having to be the hillbilly. How did you do any development for the documentarian gimmick, or like how did you come up with that? Or how did you create that character? I know Justin kind of was like, you're going to carry the camera, you're going to be my documentarian. How did you make that into?
That was more of who I am, it was closer to who I was, so it was a lot easier. Like, I was just supposed to be a professional and, dress like a professional, look like, and follow him around and then talk
Right.
smack. And, that was a lot closer to me as a person than the hillbilly.
Okay.
So it was more comfortable.
Makes sense. So did you have to figure out, because we hear all the time, the best character is just you with the volume turned up. Did you learn how to turn your volume up, or was it just like, well, I'll just be me now?
I don't know if it was really turning the volume up, but there's something in me that when I get out there and I get to release and get to be a terrible person, I feel a whole lot better.
Yeah.
As, afterwards, I'm a much happier person.
It's therapeutic, and I don't think, I don't know that a lot of people who aren't performers, or I don't even know if it's different for other performancers. Performancers?
Yeah,
There's
a new word.
Easy for me to say. I don't know. I assume it's this way for most performers, because like you can channel whatever you need to and get it and burn it out in that performance. But I feel like it's a unique thing with wrestlers because we have fans there. So it's not just, it's not like with an actor, you just channel it into the acting, right?
Yeah.
With wrestlers, like I'm channeling that out and bouncing it off a live audience that's giving it back to me a lot of times.
And feeding off of it.
Yeah. So you transition from babyface to heel.
Yep.
Any thought going to that transition? Any development? I mean, or was it just like, oh, finally, I don't have to try and make these idiots like me, or what? Like,
Well, I mean, and I really didn't know what to do as a heel.
right.
And it was just kind of trial and error and trying to figure out what worked for me. And that's when I realized I like being the bad guy, because being the good guy and trying to always be the peppy person and that's not me.
Yeah. I can relate.
And I also forgot to mention, I did go back to Peoria after, when New Midwest was still going on, because Peoria was trying to get back into things as well. And I worked with Danny McKay and Andy and the Heartbreakers, and I had to be a good guy there. And I mean, it was a nice little change, but it was a struggle.
Yeah.
It was not something I was used to.
So was it a struggle? Was it a struggle because you'd gotten so comfortable as a bad guy, or was it a struggle because you don't like being a good guy?
Little column A, little column B. I mean, I don't want to be a good guy, because I just don't know what to do with myself.
Right.
I don't know how to interact other than the yay.
Yeah.
Rah rah sis boom bah kind of thing.
No, I can relate. Okay, so then you transition. So we transitioned from. Was there any development transitioning from managing Justin to managing Mr. Hollywood?
Yeah, because again, Justin knew what he wanted, knew what was going to go on, and I didn't have to do a whole lot of thinking, to be honest. Stan did work with me a little bit more and asked for input sometimes, and so I learned, and I did listen very intently when we first started wrestling, but again, we were together for years.
Right.
Like, I think we have the longest running platonic manager-wrestler relationship in the history of wrestling.
Probably close.
And so that, once we got to that point, like, I really,
Yeah.
it was.
So how did you get to that point? What was it? So like that kind of development right there. How do you make that switch, or how do you grow through that when you start like, well, I know what to do, or how do you feel it like? I guess I don't know how to ask this question, but
Well, like, I didn't know I knew what to do until I was with Stan and kind of given that lead.
okay.
So he let me grow as a manager by giving me the space I needed.
Okay.
And he was
Yep.
a very good mouthpiece. So again, I didn't need to be on the microphone, so that worked well for me.
Okay, that's good. Were there any times you remember like realizing, oh, I need to do this? Did you feel yourself growing in that when you had that space? Did you feel yourself growing, or is it just like when you look back, you're kind of like, oh, well, I guess I did that now.
I mean, it was, at one point I stopped paying attention to when he was discussing matches unless I needed to do something super big and super important, because
Right.
I knew I could do what I wanted to do, and it would still flow with the point that John was trying to get across, and he trusted me to do whatever I needed to do to get the point across. So
Right.
it was a lot of trust built between the two of us, and it took a while to get there. So at first I was very much like his little shadow in the locker room, where I was listening to what was going on and just listening to the whole back and forth and giving my thoughts on some things. And once I learned John, I really didn't,
Right.
it became second nature.
That makes sense. So, becomes second nature. You're getting comfortable in it. Is that so? Trying to. I'm not always the quickest at figuring out how I want to word these questions. Were there any big lesson moments? Were there any times you?
We got it, dude. It's loud.
Yeah, he's the coolest guy in town.
Exactly.
Were there any moments you remember where like really stood out to you as like doing like a moment you learned something, like whether it was, oh, I shouldn't do that, or I should do this, or like where you did something and you were like, yeah, that worked exactly like I thought I was going to. You know what I mean? Like, Because that's what I have. I have moments in wrestling that I can look back and I can say, like, I remember thinking I'm gonna do this and it's gonna get over, and I'm an idiot for thinking it's gonna work. And then I get out there and I do it, and it happens exactly the way I want it to, and I'm in that moment going, yeah, I know how to do this. You know what I mean? So like.
Well, like I feel like when I was with John, that my personality as a manager got to expand more, and I was more involved in other things. Like, and this is one of my another favorite memory, where it was just me coming out and arguing about a contract with Justin McIntyre, and he had made a deal the month before. If we had sold X amount of tickets, then he would drink this disgusting milkshake from a place in Chatham, and it had like pickles and jalapenos and nacho cheese, and it was nasty. And
that sounds like the worst.
It was.
Did they blend that up?
Yes.
Oh.
With like vanilla yeah. Oh. And like this was like their challenge.
I don't remember this at
milkshake.
all. I don't.
Oh man. And so what was supposed to happen is he'd take a bite, and then I'd come out and I'd start with this contract in my hands, and then he was going to dump the milkshake on me, and I was not a fan of this idea, but whatever.
We call the play and we have to do our part.
Yeah. And so he said something that irritated me, and so he took a bite, and I stayed backstage. He took another bite, and he is glaring at the curtain, because I was supposed to have come out by now. And Benz was like, "Hey, I think you missed your spot," and I said, "Oh no, I did not." So I made him take a couple of bites,
awesome.
And then I come out and I do the thing, and then he like dumps it on me, and I'm just like, and everyone's cheering and losing their minds, and there's actually a really good picture of me just covered in this gross milkshake, and we were at Lanphier, and thank goodness, because then I could shower immediately afterwards,
right.
And that was the deal. Had this been anywhere else, no, this absolutely would not have happened. But and then Justin got mad at me. He was like, "You were supposed to." I'm like, "No, I didn't miss that spot." Watch what you say next time.
Right, brought it on yourself. So it seems like, what I hear you, where we're at there is you're just kind of getting more comfortable in doing the stuff. So then that frees your mind up to expand into, your character a little more.
Yeah.
And I think that is par for the course even with wrestlers. Like once they, for so long, their mind is constantly going, and they have to be like, "Oh, is this my spot? Is this my character? What am I doing here? What, blah, blah, blah," right? And once they get a little more comfortable and that stuff kind of becomes second nature, then their character can expand, and then they can play off the crowd a little more and a little better. And like that's where, we have that. So you take some time off, you expand that through Stan, through Mr. Hollywood. Did you ever reach a point where you felt like that was it? You'd learned everything you'd needed to learn? No. No?
No.
Never?
I've never learned everything.
Right.
I'm still learning.
So when you come back with All Eyes on Us, how does that development happen?
Again, I'm their little shadow. I'm right there, but they wanted to include me in every discussion. They wanted to make sure I was right there. I had my input, and Stephanie, what do you think about this? And well, we want you to do this, and then we're going to do this, and then you do this, and then we're going to do, and it was. It was a lot more than what I was used to, because John's a bigger guy. He's a slower wrestler, and so his was more about being big and being strong, and it was usually a slower paced match.
Yeah.
And All Eyes on Us have ADHD, I think, and their minds are just firing on 18 cylinders and coming up with ideas nonstop.
Right.
So trying to keep up and follow the flow of back and forth, this idea, that idea, change here, change there.
Right. Yep. I felt like in watching you, and you can dispute this if you want, it seemed like when you got with All Eyes on Us, you developed you developed like a little more willingness to do things for all the years before. Not that you were unwilling to do things.
No, I totally was.
Well, you know, well, I want to be clear. I know you were because I know you. You know, but I also want to be clear. It's not like you would like refuse to do things, but there was always like do I need to do that? Do we need this? Maybe. What if? Well, why would I? You know, like that kind of thing. And it seemed like after you had worked, like during and after you had worked with All Eyes on Us, it was just like, all right, I'll do it. You want me here? Do this? Great. I don't know. I have heels on. I guess I'll have to kick them out. You know what I mean? Like before it might be, I don't know if I can do that because I have heels on. And afterwards, it was kind of like, okay, if I have to do this, where can I get my heels off? You know, like, and you'd have to, like, did you see that in yourself? Or was that a kind of conscious change, or is that?
That was a conscious change because, you know, being in charge of New Midwest and being the boss, I wasn't going to do anything I didn't want to do. You know, coming into PWA, I'm not the boss anymore.
Right.
So now I'm one of the workers and I need to do what's asked of me, especially if it's going to be to improve the story, improve the show, improve characters. You know, I need to go along with it, and I'm older. You know, I've realized that maybe I'm the boss and I'm going to do what I want and shut up, I'm not listening to you is not really a great attitude.
Okay, that's fair.
So, you know, coming back as not the boss, which was a different change for me because I really didn't know how to not be the boss.
Right.
And so that was a little bit of a learning curve, but it also humbled me, and I came in with the attitude of like, I'm going to do what I need to do, and that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
I might whine.
Maybe.
But I'm not going to be just straight up like, no.
Yeah.
Because Justin would be like, well, I think you should do it. And I just go, no.
Makes sense. So, did you learn anything else from them? Working with them or you know, with All Eyes on Us? I mean, that seemed like a development in your overall.
As my character, because now I'm coming back. I don't have a video camera to hide behind. I don't, you know, it is just me.
Right.
But, you know, they loved me.
Yeah.
And I love them. And that was really what helped with the cohesion of us as a team. And I was excited to be, you know, once I worked a few shows with them, I was excited to be a part of their team.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of things too where I would come in with an outfit or something and they just go, oh my God, we were just thinking you should have this and here and I'm like, I got you.
Right. That's a fun spot to be in.
Yeah.
I also noticed a lot, like I felt that was when you were really hit that stride of like, you know, oh, this is myself with the volume turned up.
Yeah.
You know, was there conscious effort to turn that volume up, or was it just a natural outpouring of being out there with those? Because those guys are ridiculous.
It was just a natural, just being with them made you do that.
Right.
So, you know, you just couldn't not.
Yeah, for sure. Well, then you make the switch, come over to Attitude Inc. Did you learn anything with Attitude Inc.?
I've had to learn better microphone skills. Thanks a lot.
Yep.
You know, we're going into that whole I'm not going to tell you no, even though I don't want to do it, I don't whine about it thing.
Yeah. And I never listened to your whining.
Yeah,
you know, it was important to me, you know, that you weren't just a second with Attitude Inc.
Yeah.
You know, like my vision for Attitude Inc. was always more than one, like more than two. Like we were not even though there was a long stretch where it was just me and Danny. Like the vision was never that it was like, oh, Attitude Inc. is the tag team, you know. Oh, and then maybe we have a manager. Oh, and you know.
Yeah.
So like when you came in, I didn't want you just to be in the background, you know.
Yeah.
And we weren't quite as ostentatious as All Eyes on Us.
Yeah.
So
that was a little slower pace for me.
yeah, and we were a little less subdued, so it was a little more. There was a little bit more of the danger in my mind of you just kind of following us around, being that chick with Attitude Inc.
Yeah.
If I didn't make you talk and do the other stuff, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And also, I knew it was stuff you could do, and so for me it was to push that, to push you a little bit to like just fucking do it.
I know.
I know you can do it. I know you're capable. You may not like to, you may not want to, but guess what? Just go do it.
Yeah. And I know that's what I'm gonna get.
Yeah.
Like because I've been around you and Danny so much over the last billion years. And we've all kind of grown together.
Right.
I knew you were going to make me do things I didn't want to do, and I was going to whine about it, and you weren't going to listen.
Oh, yeah.
And I knew that was going to happen, but I felt better after I whined about it.
As long as you did, felt better.
I knew I was going to have to do things I didn't want to do. But I knew it wasn't just because you're being an asshole.
Yeah,
it was because I know what you were trying to do.
Right.
I know you were trying to push me to better myself.
So that's everything you learned. Did you learn, what life lessons did you take away from wrestling?
I don't know if I've really taken a life lesson. I've made lifelong friends.
Yeah.
And it's always just been kind of something fun to do and hang out with people that I enjoy spending time with and doing something fun and relieving a little bit of stress and just a way for me to relax and have a good time.
Yeah. Good. Well, I can't think of a better place to wrap this up. Ladies and gentlemen, that's how Stephanie King became the Queen of Central Illinois. And that's all for this week. So next week, so now we've talked about your history. We've talked about how you learned how to do this. So next week, we're gonna really drill into your philosophies on the business and how you think it should be approached, how you feel it should be approached, that kind of thing. And I'm very interested to get a manager's perspective, because I know what I think as a wrestler, and I know I'm like, there's so many different mindsets for it, and I don't talk to that many people who aren't wrestlers, So, from outside the ring for managers, I think it'd be a great perspective, different perspective to get. So hopefully you guys will join us next week, right here on Legends in My Own Mind.
I like that closing.
That was all right. That was better.
It was better than the last one.
Well.
We'll be running with our